What's up? GERO 508, the mind-body connection through the lifespan. All right, so this is going to be the first official lecture that is related to the assignments and the topics that are going to be examined in the assignments. Okay, um, so today could be, the 26th of June 2022, but it's not. Today is actually the 23rd. It's Thursday. And I'm doing this now because we have to jump in the airplane, my wife and I, Julia, my co-instructor, and we're going to New Orleans. That's, for the most part where she's from. She did bounce around a little bit. Her dad lives outside New Orleans in Slidell, and he's 84 years of age, and he's not in very good health. It's been a real tough go for him the last 4 months. We've been super busy with work and our own son's graduation from the master's program at UCI, and we did the Maymester in Costa Rica, and so this is our time. So we're going to go visit him and just check in on him because that's what you do out of solidarity. So yeah, so we've been, she's been doing a ton of monitoring of his well-being from home, which is the beauty of the modern world, but we need to just go check in on him. So that's what we're doing. All right, so if you saw my last video that I did post, I posted it right in here. We have all of these different tabs, if you want to call them, okay, hyperlinks within the course, okay. And right here, an important one, if you have any concerns, is the how-to folder, okay. Now, I'm also sending out this video. You're going to be getting this along with the one I'm doing right now. And this is how to navigate the course, okay? Again, this is a Blackboard-centric course. It's really well designed, so you're going to love it. This explains everything you need to do to get your A, but really everything you do to get as much as you can out of the course. These are some other supplements about, navigating Blackboard that USC offers right here. I also kind of created a little slide deck, okay, where it's not a PDF file or PowerPoint, but it just kind of goes through what you got to do. So what I'm going to do right now, like I indicated, I'm going to go into the weekly topic, okay? And when you go into the weekly topic, okay, I'm going to click the particular assignment within that week, and then that's going to launch me into the learning material, okay? Now, again, the advice that I often have is you're going to go down here, you're going to find the quiz, okay? And open up two browsers, okay? So I can do that right now. I can open up a second browser, okay? And I'm going to go into Blackboard. Okay, and we're going to find your guys' course right here, 508. I'm going to open up a second browser, okay? All right, and then what you do is you then go into, the weekly assignments, okay? And this is the first week right here, okay? And my video is going to go right here. This is the slide deck right here that I'm going to go over, okay, to help give you some background in terms of stress. Give yourself time to watch this documentary. You can obviously stop it and start it. There's a 3-minute review of the basics of how we use our kind of emotional state to tap into the stress response, okay? And then this is a scientific article that's very academic, but once you sift through it, and I'm going to go through it with you, you'll see that it's very approachable, okay? Awesome. All right, so that's everything there. What I would recommend you do is take a look at the discussions, okay? You kind of look at it in advance, okay? So this is what I need to know as I do the assignments here. So you can see the discussion is heavily weighted onto your perception of the videos and this inverted U article, okay? And then what I would do, so I've geared myself up for that, I would go ahead and hit the quiz. I'd hit begin, and I'm going to look at these different questions, only 5 of them. I'm going to kind of look them over, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to get into the actual assignment, okay? All right, so that's about how I would do it right there, all right? All right, cool. So this is back to the how-to part, okay, of the course, all right? So again, I found this by clicking down here. And these are my how-to folders, okay? And what I want to do now is I'm going to get into the assignments. Don't forget the calendar, all these events that I talked about in the original video, okay? So let's go into this one right here. Okay, here's our first week, okay? And again, this video right here is going to be placed right in here. Now, what I've done here is given you a little quick overview of the stress response. And sorry, oh, here it is, my downloads. And you can use this to just kind of guide yourself. This is a quickie in terms of just biology and how it all works, okay? Alrighty, so I'm going to put myself over here, okay, like so. And so when we look at our stress response, and we use this stress response, okay, it's also called the flight or fight response right here, okay. Um, we use that anytime we are physiologically challenged. Now, we can be challenged physiologically because of our mental state, okay, and that's a key concept of this course. But there are lots of different ways you can be physiologically challenged, okay. For example, you go out in the heat, okay, and you do some yard work, okay. You need to have a physiological adaptation so that your body is humming along in its most optimal state, okay. You're going to learn about Robert Sapolsky. He calls it homeostasis, and that we always want to be at our peak. That's what that means. And so we have these adjustments in terms of transmitter release. Okay, we want to be able to perspire. We want to be able to regulate our overall body temperature. Another example is you get a virus. Okay, let's say you got COVID. Okay, that's going to trigger an activation of the fight or flight response. Okay, there's the real threat, that happens when you're out there on the highway and somebody cuts you off. Okay, you need to have this triggering of this adrenaline rush that is going to open up your eyes so you can see everything right here, dilates the pupils, okay? You get this cotton mouth, okay? So everybody's had that psychological experience, okay, when you're having the adrenaline rush, when you have to go do public speaking. It's because we don't need to be forming saliva when things are a little bit kind of, on edge, life-threatening, okay? We're going to increase our heart rate, increase our respiratory rate. We're going to get the blood and the oxygen flowing. That's what this is all about. We're going to create fuel. Our big energy reserve is our storage facility. Is our liver, and we're going to do everything we can to release the glucose molecules that have been stored as glycogen in your liver. You shut down your GI system. You don't need to be digesting food. That creates a lot of time and work. Okay, you're going to give a little backup. Okay, from your brain through the sympathetic nervous system that releases adrenaline. It also has the backup of causing blood release of adrenaline into the blood from your adrenal gland right here. Okay. Awesome. Once it's all cooled down, this is what meditation's all about. This is about calming things down and really kind of a period of rebuild. And this is the rest and digest, okay, system, the parasympathetic system. And it basically does the polar opposite of everything that happened here. So this is what we're doing all the time. It's always in check, okay? Awesome. Okay, so this is the key axis that is talked about. So you have a perceived stress. It can be psychological, it can be unconscious, it can be a true physiological stress. Okay, like I said, you don't realize you're tapping into the system when you're overheating or when you have a response to a bee bite, or you have an injury where you've torn a ligament. This is all part of the same system, okay? The stress is real, okay? And it's set into motion then. We got to bring the body on board from what's going on in the mind, okay? And so we have really right here, the air traffic controller of our brain that brings on board the body. And this is the hypothalamus. This is, basically the part of our brain that also is modulating lots of different behaviors, like feeding behavior, okay? So we actually have an area in our brain that is responsive to nutrition and to hormones related to digestion and nutrition. And so it's called your satiety center. So this hypothalamus is constantly dumping hormones into the body to maintain you at an optimal level, at this homeostasis, okay? One thing it does do too, if there's a threat, is it's gonna trigger the stress response, okay? So the hypothalamus releases this factor, okay? CRF, called corticotropin releasing factor. It then goes to the gland that actually leaves the cranium. It leaves the encased bony skull structure that protects your brain. And it is this interface, okay? And this pituitary gland then responds to this corticotropin releasing factor by releasing a hormone into the blood called adrenocorticotropin hormone, or ACTH, okay? The ACTH then goes racing down to the outer shell of your adrenal gland. So we always refer to the outer shell of a biological structure as the cortex. So this is my cerebral cortex. That's my adrenal cortex. The outer casing, the outer layers of my kidney are called the kidney cortex, okay? And in the adrenal cortex, it responds to this hormone ACTH that releases cortisol. And as indicated through here, cortisol then brings on board everything you need to know about this, everything you need in terms of preparation for a stressor. So it releases more fuel into the body, okay? The bottom line is whatever the stress is, it requires the engines to work. You need the engines to go, and for the engines to go, you need to have fuel, okay? So it increases glucose as well, okay? And through a whole different process. Now, what's important about this guy is you're always perceiving stress, mentally, so that person on the freeway cuts you off and you're on high alert, and then they disappear and you watch them drive off the off ramp, and then you can calm down a little bit, okay? At the same time, as your mental function is calming down, what happens is the cortisol that is released that was gearing your body up for stress, okay? It will then also go back up to the brain. It's always knocking the door on the brain saying, hey, can we shut it off? Can we shut it off? So it's negative feedback, okay? Key element, okay? All right. However, as long as you're perceiving this stress right here, as indicated, it's going to override this negative feedback, okay? Long as your eyes are seeing something, you're hearing something, as long as there is a true stress, it's going to shut it off. Okay. All righty. Okay, so this again shows you these two components of the stress response. It's a very fast, immediate impulse, electrical cables going from the hypothalamus. You see these cables, this sympathetic nervous system that goes down through the spinal cord. This is all part of your central nervous system. It then leaves the central nervous system and goes out into the periphery, and this is your peripheral nervous system. And again, this is part of this automatic or autonomic nervous system that we refer to as the sympathetic nervous system. It directly sends cables to your heart and your lungs, etc., but it also goes for this backup where it goes to the adrenal gland. And unlike the outer shell, the cortex, it goes to the inner core, which is the medulla. Again, this is how we name things biologically. The inner core of the kidney is the medulla, the inner core of the brain is the medulla, and the inner core of this adrenal gland is the medulla. It releases, okay, epinephrine, okay, also known as adrenaline, into the blood, and it then serves as backup to cause your blood vessels to contract, for your heart to race, all these different things that are key, these adaptations that are key to get you out of harm's way. All right. And then all that's pedal to the metal. You need fuel. So the simplest interpretation then is, again, here's the air traffic control of the brain, the hypothalamus, releasing this corticotropin releasing hormone. It goes to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland then responds in turn, to release this hormone called adrenocorticotropin hormone, or ACTH. And then it goes down, and again, it doesn't go into the core, it goes to the outer shell, or the cortex, that releases these glucocorticoids, the steroids. The famous one is cortisol, okay? And so anytime people do long-term studies about stress, they're usually monitoring blood cortisol. Now, what's cool is you also have it into your saliva, so you can do a pretty simple stress experiment, okay, a stress study, by looking at salivary cortisol, and you'll see this happen over and over again. All right, cool. So let's get into the perception, the brain, and how it works, okay? And there's a reference to this center of our brain that pulls in all the bits and pieces of information, the sensory encoding, what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, what I'm smelling, okay, what I feel or touch. Ouch, that hurt, right? That triggered a little bit of a stress response, pain, okay? All right, that information comes racing in. It's processed by the cortex, but it has a straight line shot to a structure called the amygdala, right here, the amygdala, okay? And the amygdala, okay, as shown, okay, right here, okay, it's at the base of the brain, okay, it receives that information and it will bypass the processing of your cortex of what are we doing here if it's a strong enough signal, okay, so enough input. If I have enough pain coming in, okay, if I hear things like I just heard a siren from the fire station right now, but it's coming up behind me, okay? The police officer's pulling me over, okay? Then you get a real immediate activation of the stress response, okay? So the amygdala goes straight in and it bypasses the processing that is up here in our cortex, okay? And it triggers the whole adrenaline rush that we were talking about right here. So the amygdala sends its input, its cables into the hypothalamus that says, it's go time, baby, okay? All righty. We do have checks and balances, okay? So there's kind of a triad right here, all right? So right here is the amygdala, okay? Now, we have two structures that are key, okay? One is the hippocampus, and this is our processing of learning and memory. It's key to forming new memories, but it's also kind of a storage facility where we retrieve old memories and compare it to what's happening in the here and now. So here's what happened last time, here's what's going on now, and send information into the amygdala and say, you know what, you really need to act now, okay? So that's where the memory comes in, okay? Now the hippocampus, this triad, okay, also processes what's going on now as you're forming a new memory, what happened before, okay? And it sends information to your decision maker, which is your prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex, okay, it's going there saying, yeah, but last time that happened, things were okay if you did this, right? Remember hippocampus? Hippocampus is retrieving the memories, that's right. And the prefrontal cortex, based on the comparison that's ongoing says, you know what, I'm gonna make a decision on this. And that's what this prefrontal cortex is all about, it's your decision maker. And it sends information, its final decision, back to the amygdala, along with other areas that are beyond this class. There's key movement areas, how I'm going to react physically, my basal ganglia, and it creates a response. So hey, we did this; it wasn't so bad. So you don't have to have a full-blown long-term stress response. All right, so that's how that system works. Okay, now the amygdala can hijack this thing if it's intense. Okay, now what if you perceive something to be more intense than it is? Okay, that's psychological stress. Alrighty, so again, this is this kind of overview of what's going on here with this triad of structures. Okay, so we have prefrontal cortex. Okay, logical thinking, everything's going to be okay. Okay, we have the amygdala. This is just fight or flight. Okay, so if it gets turned on unabated, then it is game on, okay? Then we have the hippocampus, okay? Our memory center that is not only forming new memories, like I said, but retrieving the old memories and interacting with our decision maker, okay? So it's regulating the memories and how we are gonna have, what kind of an emotional response we're gonna have anything, okay? Alrighty, so this is this ongoing activity that happens here, okay? And so we're always trying to tone down the amygdala, okay? The way I remember the amygdala is the letter A, okay? So A stands for anger, A stands for fear, A stands for the letter A in rage, okay? And A stands for anxiety, okay? So when you have too much of this A, then this amygdala is going to be overactive and it can actually shut off these guys, shut off your logical decision making, and you overreact and you create ungodly amounts of the stress response, which includes, remember, bump, the release of cortisol into the blood. And the cortisol, has its job, but not all the time. All the time, cortisol is really at the actual base of the problems that we have. So if you have this unrelenting psychological stress, okay, for example, post-traumatic stress disorder, okay, PTSD, or unrelenting anxiety, okay, then what happens is the cortisol is chronically elevated in your brain, and it unfortunately, as it's knocking on the door trying to shut the system off, it actually that's only supposed to be happening, here and there, not all the time. It causes degeneration of your brain. You get shrinkage of your hippocampus, okay, and you get shrinkage of your decision maker, your prefrontal cortex. So this guy shrinks, this guy will actually get bigger. All right, and so it gets bigger and stronger and begins to overwhelm this, and you can see this becomes this downward spiral, this kind of death spiral. All right, and there's actually a condition, okay, that's called stress-related dementia, okay, where people are actually diagnosed with true dementia because of their chronic exposure to stress, okay. So, and this is why we have interventions, okay, that we're going to talk about in this class that will lower your stress. They'll help you rebuild the functioning and the plasticity of the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus. And when stress is lower, cortisol is lower, then the amygdala will shrink and it will become less of a driving force, okay? All right, so that's the key concepts right there, okay? So when we look right here, this is the feedback principle that I was talking about, okay? So you're always trying to shut this off, okay? Here's the stress response. Here's the air traffic controller, hypothalamus, correcto, all right? Pituitary gland, releasing of cortisol by the adrenal cortex. It turns on all kinds of things. It shuts off your immune system, okay? It helps shut off your gastrointestinal system, okay? It releases tons of glucose into the blood. It can actually cause diabetes and insulin receptor insensitivity, all kinds of bad things when it's chronic. And it's always feeding back saying, hey, can we shut off? So it feeds back to the hypothalamus and it feeds back here to the hippocampus, okay? But if you are perceiving stress, okay, then that will override this shut off. This shut off doesn't happen, okay? And so if the amygdala just continues to rage because you can't shut the system off, then the hippocampus dies off. And the hippocampus, remember, its job is to shut the system off, right? The hippocampus is normally, when we're looking at this feedback control, cortisol tells the hippocampus has this negative influence that tries to shut off the stress response. But if your hippocampus is dying off, if it's shrinking, you got a problem, okay? All right, so read through all this and you'll see how this kind of relates to what I've been talking about in the lecture. Awesome, very cool, guys. All righty, so that's my guide, and you can read through that as well, and you'll find it very, very fulfilling, okay? All right, so this is one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. Of course, I'm biased. I'm really into brain physiology, but it's the whole concept of stress. It's done by the National Geographic. It's such a cool documentary. It lasts about an hour, so give yourself time to watch this. You can break it up if you want. And it goes over, it does a real neat comparison of experimental biology with what we call epidemiology. Epidemiology is where we're studying our human brethren. We're studying large populations of humans, and we do some correlational analysis with the humans, okay? And able to look at changes in the stress physiology in humans and see how that correlates to stress, okay? Correlates to social influences, okay? Social pecking order, some unique aspects. And then we also do some really neat experiments in this video looking at animal models, okay? All righty, cool. This is an overview of the outcome. So watch this, and then when you watch this, you'll be like, I got it. And then we have right here the article, okay? It's a short article, but this guy's an academic, all right? So it can be thick at times, all right? So let's take a look at this article right here. All righty. All right, so this is stress, the brain, and individual variability in the inverted U. So that's a mouthful right there. So we're going to look at how stress impacts brain function, but also globally our overall health and physiological function. Okay. We're going to consider the concept that there's lots of individual variability. One thing that I find very stressful, somebody who's sitting right next to me might not. Okay. It all has to do from life experiences, and also it has a lot to do with the genetics of who we are. So it's this combination of nurture and nature. And then the inverted U is this concept of we all have what I would call a sweet spot, okay? And so you need to have just the right amount of stress so that you can really navigate the world, all right? Okay, so this is, basically what is talking about when he is talking about Robert Sapolsky. And again, he's my hero. He's an amazing, amazing psychologist, physiologist, neuroscientist, okay? And so he's going to connect the dots here in this article of looking at stress responses, the endocrine, he calls, he's an academic, what's a transducer? Endocrine is hormones and how they signal, okay, that's what a transducer does, signal the whole stress response all throughout your body. And then he's going to talk about how that affects our memory abilities, our cognition, our overall well-being, okay, our affect, you've heard of affective disorders like clinical depression, okay, anxiety, these are affective disorders, and then our ongoing behavior. So that's what this is all about right here, okay? So he gives us a little history lesson right here. I do remember learning all about Roger Guillemin way back when I was being trained as a physiologist, and he was the true, grandfather of endocrine physiology. And he was the first to kind of, as Sapolsky indicates, to kind of make that link between, hey, our endocrine system is influenced by our perception of the world, our emotions. And then people like Sapolsky were able to then dive in and kind of look at the brain effects, okay? And so that's what he's talking about right here, okay? And he goes beyond, okay? So stress is also a mediator of inflammation, okay? Now as he indicated, early on, we learned about, hey, this cortisol, also called glucocorticoid, in the acute sense can be anti-inflammatory, okay? It shuts down the immune system, okay? I mentioned that earlier, okay? In fact, oftentimes, if you have an injury to your joints and you have swelling, one of the early ways of dealing with that is to do a steroid injection into your joint, okay? And it will cause this swelling reduction. That's all fine and good, okay? However, we need our immune system, okay? We need our immune system to do the repair of that joint that is swollen, okay? It goes in there and it gets rid of all the torn up tissue and bad cells. It chews it up. You excrete the debris in your kidneys, and your liver processes it, and then in come new cells to rebuild it. So the immune system is not bad. It's just during the acute phase, it can cause pain and a general feeling of malaise. Okay. The other part of that happens with the immune system is you have this inflammation response where you're releasing all these chemical messengers called cytokines, chemical cellular messenger, okay? And these cytokines have become really famous lately. TNF alpha, interleukin 6, okay? A lot of you may take Actemra or Humira for your inflammatory diseases, and it's a way of curtailing those inflammatory cytokines when they're pathological, okay? But we need those cytokines, okay? So the reason you run a fever when you have the coronavirus is your immune system is responding, okay? And it's releasing cytokines. Now, the pendulum can swing too far, okay? So the immune system always has the best intention, but sometimes it's so aggressive, okay? So that happened early days with the coronavirus. As people were getting sick, the primary site of infection was in their lungs. There was huge inflammation in the lungs. And because of that ongoing attack, there was a lot of swelling, okay? A lot of fluids were being released, okay, into the lung absorption area, and people were dying of asphyxiation. So one of the early approaches with the coronavirus was to actually give steroids to slow down this inflammation. Yes, you may be sick longer, okay, but you're not going to die acutely. All right, so that's what this is all about right here. Okay, awesome. So, and that's just kind of I mean, we could have an entire course on just the physiology of the stress system as it relates to immunity, which we can't. But we are going to tap in to psychoneuroimmunology later on in this class, and you're going to love it. Okay. Okay. All right. So when we look, deeper into this article, okay, and one thing that we're trying to tap into is that when you have chronic stress, it can have long-term consequences, okay, in terms of your body's function. Like I said, one aspect of chronic stress is diabetes. It causes not only immune suppression, but it causes insulin receptor insensitivity. Your blood sugar stays elevated with no purpose. Okay, if I'm being chased by a lion, my muscles are going to use up that glucose. If I'm sitting here ruminating over, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills next week, that's a whole different story. Okay, and there can be long-term consequences. All right. We have this really severe stress that happens early in life, can have significant problems for you later on in life. It can actually change your genetics. Okay. Your cookbook is the same, but there's this whole field of epigenetics where you're looking at what genes are turned on and which genes are turned off. Okay, and we're going to get into that as well. Okay, alrighty. So in here, again, what Dr. Sapolsky does is he goes over this concept of the amygdala and having the overactive amygdala and the fact that these stress hormones increase the plasticity and cause this area, this fear, anger, rage, and anxiety area to get bigger, to expand. Okay, an expansion of its processes. Okay, and then as he indicated up here, at the same time, the hippocampus, okay, the decision maker, they shrink. Okay, so this goes back to what I was showing you earlier. Okay, alrighty. This is seen in many psychiatric disorders, and that's what Dr. Sapolsky talks about here. Okay, and it's not only the fact that we can look at the stress response, okay, and right here he talks about the genetics of the stress response and this particular protein, how it helps to mediate this cortisol signal that goes into the brain, okay, and in other parts of the tissue. And we see that genetically, this protein, when it's not working right, is a harbinger for people that have schizophrenia and also clinical depression, right? So a lot of research going into that. And when it says polymorphisms, this means that we're all very different in terms of the recipe that we have for different proteins right here, okay? It also affects serotonin. And that was a really important thing to think about. And he talks about that there. Okay. Alrighty. Now, when we're looking at stress, okay, and as he's talking about stress, okay, now I want you to kind of hone in on this concept of this inverted U, okay, and again, we're very different when it comes to inverted U. What is the inverted U? Okay, we can see this over here, okay, so we have our level of steroid hormone. So if you are genetically one of these people that just don't release very much steroids, okay, then that actually can be to your detriment, okay? You need, and we're looking at here, it says numerous neurobiological endpoints, okay? Those endpoints are talking about this is good, all right? So again, I don't know why we have to speak in this kind of way, but salutary, okay? So this is like a solution, right, to a problem. So this is a good thing. Deleterious, this is harmful. So being on the low side is not a good thing. There's a sweet spot of just the right amount of steroids being released. And then I have my arrow right here, having it go back, and back. So having a sweet spot. But Overreacting puts you over here, and then this has this long-term deleterious effect as well. All right. And people that overreact are going to be the people that have the bigger amygdala and have the prefrontal cortex and hippocampus that have shrunk. Okay, so you can see that this triad, how that works out. And then if you're always overstimulating and overreacting, then these steroids are going to put you at risk for dementia, diabetes. Diabetes is the biggest risk factor for having dementia later on in life. Okay, immune suppression. Okay, which means you're going to be vulnerable to every infection known to mankind. Okay, so you do not want to be on this end. Sweet spot right here. This right here is understimulating. So this is this concept, this inverted U that he goes over. Okay, lots of individual differences. You can read through it with these concepts as I put forth, and you're going to do just fine. Yes, he is an academic, okay? So sometimes he can be a little bit wordy in what he's talking about, but I think you guys have the concept in terms of what's going on. All right, so that's, basically the drill. Again, you can have the quiz open and save your answers as indicated earlier. When you get all done with everything, then you get in here and you do the prompt and you're good to go for the first part of the class, okay? All right, so I'm going to go back to square one. Again, this video is going in right here, and I'll be sending it out as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this first lecture. I hope I put your fears at ease. I will put your fears at ease all semester long, I promise you. So guess what? I got to go get ready because we got to go jump in a plane. So I will say peace to you guys, okay? And we'll see you next time.